I'm Lisa Lancer Rose.
And I'm Ann Labar.
And this is This Animal Life.
And today we're talking about dogs and domestication and who domesticated whom, who domesticated whom, or I'm not sure. There's an interesting thing that just happened with wolves that people are all like goo-goo-eye about.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's very cute. Basically, there's sort of the two main theories are that we domesticated them. I mean, big overview. We domesticated them, they domesticated, or they domesticated us. According to a lot of the studies and stuff I was looking at, I looked at New Scientist mostly. That's like my favorite magazine.
Oh,
It's out of the UK, but
yes.
it used to be when Carl would travel, he'd bring me home. He'd bring it home to me, but I have a digital subscription now. They have done quite a few articles on the domestication of dogs. So I was surprised. I had read an article a long time ago. They must have rehashed it because it was a January 2021 article about the domestication. And I also looked at the Smithsonian a little bit and National Geographic. Those were the three that I kind of hit big on. But, how did they go from being our rivals to our pals? And it's a good question because we all know that every dog came from a wolf, and they don't know when. At first they thought it was like 14,000 years ago. But they've recently done some more genetic studies and say it's up to 40,000 years ago.
Okay.
So between 15,000 and 40,000 is a long time. But genetically, it gets muddied because they seem to see proof that they've been domesticated more than once.
No.
Yeah, and it makes sense. The world's a big place. They originally thought, or still, I think the main theory is that they came out of Asia, I believe.
Because sometimes you hear, is it the coyote? Is it the pariah dog?
Right.
And is it the wolf? Or do we just want it to be the wolf because we romanticize the wolf?
I think so too, because they were our dear enemies, and we have this long history of killing them and them killing us, and them being these sort of evil presence in the European forest. Here you go. There's a article in National Geographic that I didn't read. There was People and Dogs, a genetic love story.
Yes.
Yeah,
So romantic.
it is.
It is. I feel it.
It's beautiful. And there's even genetic, I'll get into this a little bit more, but there's similar genetic information from both people and dogs that predispose us to being very social.
Okay.
Oh, Europe or Asia. It isn't clear whether they came out of Europe or Asia. I always picture it as Europe because of the whole wolf in the woods thing. Beauty and the Beast. He's running away from
Oh,
wolves.
yeah. Our folklore.
Yeah, all our folklore.
Mhm.
And it's our folklore. So that's how we know it. There is the oldest known dog burial is from 14,000 years ago. And saying that would show that they were firmly installed, firmly entrenched in being our pets and our companions. But the theories are, there's a couple of theories. There's the hunter theory.
The hunter theory?
That humans domesticated wolves to be hunting partners. They really, really, really doubt that. That's highly doubted.
But I have read I don't know where, that one possibility is that we observed them hunting and copied them. So we were learning from them, and maybe they were watching us and going, oh, look.
Yeah, look at those guys.
Mimicry is the highest form of flattery.
Yeah,
I really like these guys.
Hey, they're not as dumb as we thought.
And then we put one of their heads on our heads.
Yeah, and danced around.
No, and then they're like, that's not good.
Yeah, well, we have a long history of, like I said, killing each other.
Do they kill us?
Oh, yes.
Huh, because I remember I had this record album with, I think it was narrated by, was it Paul Newman or Robert Redford? It was a record, and it told the story of wolves, or I guess it was all about wolves, and it had wolf howls on it, and I listened to it over and over and over and over again. And one of the things I remember him saying on that record album, which I would really like to find now that I think about it. What a cool thing to have. I don't have it anymore, but that there was not one known
Oh,
case
okay.
of a wolf attacking a
Okay,
human.
that could be because, the same goes for killer whales. Orcas.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Orcas have no,
What?
they've never attacked
What
people.
about Blackfish?
Blackfish, orcas, same thing. Um,
No, the movie Blackfish.
oh, well, that's different in the wild. That attack was from the psychotic, poor one that they had in captivity. I mean, there were a couple
Yes.
attacks at SeaWorld, but
There might have been like a rabid wolf,
yeah, that would definitely
or
be.
a cornered wolf.
I think folklore is wolves being evil in the forest and attacking as a pack and attacking children and dragging children off into the forest.
Like those are boogeyman
Yeah,
stories. Maybe.
maybe,
They may
maybe.
just be boogeyman stories.
I wouldn't doubt food's scarce that they would go after small children, but yeah,
Absolutely. Humans have done the same.
exactly. So they discount that whole. There's also the theory that they captured wolf pups and raised them. They doubt that because of they
What?
instinctually wolves instinctually would, I wouldn't say attack, but yeah, attack us, or they're a wild animal. They would not domesticate well. I mean, as a wolf pup, if you raise a wolf pup, you're still putting yourself in danger.
What's all this about women breastfeeding wolf pups?
Oh, yes. Well, again, lore, because that gave
I could totally do that.
oh God, talk about biting. You usually quit with your kids once they get teeth because instinctually they are afraid of us. They avoid us. So if you're just pulling a wolf pup out of a litter, it wouldn't necessarily be successful once in a while kind of thing, but it wouldn't always go very well.
It still
Yeah, it
isn't.
still
Yeah.
isn't. I mean,
They're not
no,
good
they're not
pets.
good pets at all. Yeah, not at all. And because in so many ways it's extraordinary, and dogs and human relationships are very extraordinary, but they think that one of the things about dogs domesticating themselves or wolves domesticating themselves is the campfire theory,
Okay.
that they tossed food. We were an easy food source. There's that great meme I put up about the wolf. He's like crawling through the snow, like low, kind of like a border collie, like walking through snow, like, oh, I'll just go over there and, get some meat at the fire. What could happen? And then they have
Right.
that tens of thousands of years later, and then it shows like greyhounds and crocheted hats, and like what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, little do you know. Oh, it's so sad.
So is this the flight distance
Yes,
theory?
and
Oh,
that they slowly got closer and closer, is that what you mean?
that animals have an innate distance at which they will get frightened
Run,
and run.
right.
And I guess we have it too.
Sure.
And it's measurable. So it's something to do with birds and any
Oh,
other
sure.
creature that you can get so close to them. Like the chickadee has a really short flight
Right.
distance, so you can get close
Yeah.
to a chickadee. But then there are other birds, like the Lord God bird, I
Right.
guess, that you never see because it has such a big flight
Right.
distance, if they're even still
Yeah.
out there. So, and flight distance varies among individuals, say even in the same litter.
Mhm.
So these dogs that you're
Right.
talking about would approach a fire, but some of them would be a little more seemingly reckless or bold
Right.
and would come closer or stay longer.
Right.
And then others were easily
Right, and the
spooked.
ones that would get closer
Yeah.
became accustomed to people, and plus they got stuff for it, which was awesome.
Yes, an easy
An
meal.
easy meal, and so they were hanging around, and
And then they bred with each other.
right, and then they get, one of the things is the, Russian fox study, where the
Okay.
guy, and of course, I'm not gonna have any specific, but it wasn't that long ago, a Russian scientist picked out the friendliest fox pups. They tested them all.
Okay.
If they were a little more calm or they didn't have that much of a problem with people, he would then breed them. And
Okay.
they then developed in a very, very short amount of time. And I wish I had the information on how many generations it was, but it was not long. They developed, floppy ears, more puppy like appearances and behavior. And the
Okay.
same thing happened with dogs. They got the
So
speckled coats, the floppy ears. puppy behavior that stuck around. And
So they retained, this is neoteny,
okay.
that where they the TEN, the word geek. TEN is in tenacious, to hold on.
Okay.
And neo as in new.
Ah.
So, or newborn. So neoteny is the hanging on of baby-like characteristics.
Ah.
So a puppy has the big eyes, the short nose, the domed
Right.
head, the drop ears, and then as it matures, the muzzle lengthens and the ears stand up.
Mhm.
Okay. So you're saying these foxes stayed, well, they're not called puppies, are they? They're called kittens.
Kits.
So these foxes that were friendlier when they were bred to each other, very quickly when they matured, they stayed kit-like.
Yes, very quickly. They
Baby-like.
develop that very, very quickly. And those are traits that are all attractive to us.
Now, do they talk about why that would be? Why?
No, but there's some genetic, I guess maybe the friendly gene is somehow linked with
Okay.
puppy traits.
Or our own response to our own babies?
Oh, that could be. Well, that's why we like
To be
a baby
they
animal.
have the short, yes, they have the short little
And the
arms and legs.
big eyes.
Yes, and the teeny weeny
Yep.
nose and the big head. So we're just predisposed to like babies.
Oh, big eyes especially.
And a baby is going to be deferential.
Yes.
Cooperative. It's gonna be dependent.
Yeah. We
Okay.
like to care for things sometimes, especially with doggies. There is and you'll like some of this. That one theory is by Maria Lahtinen, Finnish Food Authority in Helsinki. And
A food
her
authority.
colleagues suggest that the key may have been extra meat, that there was a good hunting season. You know, dogs were domesticated when much of northern Europe was under ice, much colder. Humans and wolves would have competed for food. They're top predators, but wolves can only survive on lean meat, which is protein and not much else. But wild game is very lean. So, but humans can't. We need the fat. We need the fat for our brains. We need, So if there's extra lean meat, then they had a good time. They would toss it away. Say, oh, there's an animal. We all have those. I think that's an instinctual thing. Like, here, have something. Or they toss it. Human hunters could have ended up with way more lean meat than they could consume. Wolves could have eaten this surplus, implying that they weren't in total competition during the harsh winters. And the humans could have shared the lean meat with the wolves without losing out.
Okay. Were we gaining anything other than feeling
Yeah,
generous?
that's what they think, is that they they hung around more. Oh, they're thinking puppies too, but that they would have kept them once they were friendly enough. They would have ended up keeping them because they were good hunting partners.
Well, I wonder too if they just didn't think it was cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I think if a creature like that was hanging around and we were finding, we could see ourselves in them.
Oh, that could
They're
be.
social. They're badass hunters. We want to feel like we're badass
Right.
hunters, and they're sort of
Oh,
accepting us as one of
it's
them.
like alpha males have in the car. You want a big, mean dog. Yeah, you want a big, mean companion that can set you apart. They do think that what could have happened too is that they, with this whole lean meat excess food thing, is that they could have taken in some orphaned wolf pups, like if they had killed wolves or whatever,
Okay.
and and maybe viewed them as somewhat as pets and fed them on the extra meat without really any kind of long-term goal in mind. But the ones that were tamed and stuck around were good hunting partners. Dogs are still good hunting partners.
They can hear things we can't
Yeah.
hear. I wonder if they didn't also at some point start barking to alert for intruders.
Right. And that's another benefit of having this canine.
Mhm.
It helped them with hunting, security, some,
Okay.
maybe protecting the kids. They get
Yes.
protective of small things, female dogs especially. And
So they had some of the same, they were showing us some of the same behavior
right.
that we were showing them,
And
where we were caretaking and
right.
protecting. It was mutual.
What makes it kind of extraordinary that it even happened was because it was during a time when, it was modern humans as we know them, cavemans, but they're still Homo sapiens. They weren't very tolerant of carnivorous competitors. It was not something that there was no love there. I mean, they pretty much wiped out all the high level carnivore competitives. Totally
Humans did.
humans did. They wiped out the saber-toothed
Okay.
tiger. They even wiped out, what was the other example that the National Geographic gave? Pretty much every large carnivore that ever existed, including saber-toothed cats
Wow.
and giant hyenas. So they just killed them because they were competition. And
But we spared the wolf
well, I
or
think we killed
canines.
no, I think they killed a lot of them. Think of the problems wolves have modern. Killed a lot
Yes.
of wolves because they're competition. They go after our sheep and our livestock. Yeah, and wolves don't like to share. So if people were going to sneak in and steal from them because they caught something, that wasn't happening either. And we have a long tradition. So it's kind of extraordinary that they tolerated us long enough to evolve into a domesticated dog. And it's interesting. I love how National Geographic puts it. It talks about, in terms of evolution, we always think the fittest survive. In terms
Mhm.
of wolf to dog, it's the survival of the friendliest. Times were bad, the
Yes.
friendly ones got fed. And they think that most likely it was wolves that approached us and not the other way around. They were probably scavenging on the edge of settlements. They were hanging around. They were bold but aggressive.
So they domesticated
Yes, that is the
themselves.
prevailing theory.
And by domesticate, we mean that to tame an animal by generations of
Right,
breeding, not an
right.
individual animal. But as you were talking about with the fox study, so we genetically tame them to live in close
Yes,
association with
because
us, or
if
even to become accustomed to our way
right,
of
because if we
life.
took in the friendly ones, it's the friendly ones that are gonna breed.
And then some of their offspring are
Right, and they'd
friendlier.
keep those. They probably wouldn't keep the other
And,
ones.
and then eventually you have the dachshund.
Yes, eventually you end up with the dachshund. Changes also, I love this part. Changes happened physically, genetically, but they also changed their psychology. And these proto dogs evolved the ability to read human gestures.
So they have a genetic predisposition to observe our body
Yes.
language and find meaning
Yes.
in it that is of significance to them.
Yes. And because it's actually, it's often food related. We point and say, eat that. And they go, hey, yeah, there's food. They're human directed behaviors. They can read our facial expressions, our tone of voice. I don't know if any other animal has shown this. I don't think wolves do, but that they will look where we point or even where we turn our eyes. We don't even have to
Yes,
point,
that
we just
is
have to look at something.
a book by Adam McLosey. Did studies of wolf pups and dog pups
Yes.
raised together
Okay.
and showed that the young puppies had, or the dog puppies came ready, already wired to look where we're
Right.
pointing. If there are two buckets of food and we point, or two
Mhm.
buckets and one has food and we point to the one that has food in it, the dog puppy will go to that bucket that we
Right.
pointed at. But you do the same experiment with a wolf puppy and it's just going to check out those
Right.
buckets itself. It's not factoring in which way the human
Right.
pointed.
And even primates, bonobos, chimps, they have no clue what we're doing. They will not follow a pointed finger. They will not follow an eye gaze.
Get
No, they can't do it.
out.
It is not something that they do at all, which means
So they would have to learn that. What we're saying is, I mean, a wolf is certainly intelligent enough to learn.
right. And I would think that you could if you have, like a Coco or something, eventually they'll learn like, oh, if they point, because they're smart enough, oh, if they point, there's something good there.
Sure.
So yeah, but they don't come hardwired like that.
The puppy does it without having to learn it.
Yes, automatically. But very recently, there was a wolf behavior can be amazingly human-like. So that's part of what you were saying, is we recognized ourselves in them.
Okay.
But they recently, let me find the name, Evan McLean, University of Arizona, finds the ball retrieval particularly interesting.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited right now.
They observed a wolf pup actually played fetch. They had 3 wolves from a 2016 litter that fetched balls, and one did it all.
Wait,
One did it on,
the
no,
others didn't?
just certain ones
Oh,
would fetch a ball, and one of them did it all 3 trials of the test, and others would play with the ball, but they wouldn't return it.
okay. I've had dogs
And
like
the
that.
scientists think that the difference is rooted in the pup's genetics, since the litters were brought up
Oh my
in
God.
identical conditions. These were wolf pups.
Oh, that is
So, the first
fascinating.
part is chasing it, picking it up in its mouth is part of predatory play. Wolf
Yes.
pups are going to do that. It's the returning with the object to the person that is dog-like. And they were very,
Okay.
very excited. But the one guy, McLean, notes that the fetch part may have been incidental. It wasn't clear. It may have
What?
just happened. It's not clear if the return to the person was really about bringing the object back or just a social approach, and he still happened to have the ball in his mouth.
I
And they
see.
learn
Yes.
fast. There's like, oh, they like it when I do that. Maybe they give me something when I do that.
Yeah, or they'll throw
Right.
it again,
And I
and
get
I
to
get to
chase it
chase it
again, which
again.
is reward. Whatever their
Yes.
intentions, they think that suggests that there is variation in human-directed play behaviors in wolves, and it could have been targeted early in a dog's domestication. Somebody throws something,
That humans just liked
right, and
playing
that the
with them,
wolves, there was
of
a
course.
similar play, because we're predators too. There's similar play behaviors. You chase a stick, you pick it up. Do you bring it back or
Yes,
not?
that's so
So,
true.
we have that
Well, a
game.
lot of our play, yes, is, tickling. Yeah, that's a particular thing that you get the sensation and you laugh, but it's also like a pounce and a
Right,
wrestle.
right.
There's
Yes.
also a battle in there, and hide and
Yep.
go seek.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah. They do
okay.
that too because it's a hunting behavior. One of the things they're saying when they saw this, that this one wolf pup did it 3 times, that when, the similarities between dogs and wolves can give us insights on why they were pursued basically, or why we would even think about why we pursued it. If they brought something back, it would be a way into our hearts. It could have been a selective advantage as well for early dog domestication. And again, that's something that they would do. Any wolf puppies that showed human directed behavior could have had a selective advantage. Then we go from there. But
Well, when you're bringing the toy back, you're bridging your flight
yeah,
distance too. So you're overriding your fear in order to
yep,
deliver the toy
yeah.
or the stick.
It is a question though, because we benefit from having them. They certainly benefit from having us. And
Yes.
some people say it was a little of both, which is kind of what it really sounds like. Yeah,
Yes. It's probably all of the above.
exactly. With the
That's
exception,
always the safest
right,
answer on the
right,
SATs,
all of the above.
right?
What muddies the water, that doesn't make it a clear line of where they came from, is that they may have been domesticated more than once. And also, what really kind of muddies the genetic waters is that there has been a lot of interbreeding between wolves and dogs now. We get our wolf, the wolf. Oh yeah,
What?
people who want wolves.
Oh, you mean like the
The
wolf dog and the toy
right,
dog?
right. The people do that.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's a
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not the safest thing.
It's not the Tiger
Right.
King,
No,
but
but
it's
it is, you
close.
want, like, when I lived in Alaska, there was actually, I don't know what they called themselves, but it was a wolf place. I ended up taking my nephew, and they were wolf hybrids. and people would go there and pay a lot of money for pups.
Wow.
But these these dogs were amazing hunters, and you didn't always want to get very close to them. They're
No, they're
big, they're
big.
aggressive.
They're short-tempered. At least,
Well,
well,
they are, I think, in general.
I mean, they're not going to put up with your
Right,
bullshit.
exactly. So, but it's again, it's the big sports car. You want to have this. You want to have a wolf. I have a wolf, even though he's half husky.
Yes. It's
It is power.
power.
It's not wise, but it is power. So, but that muddies the water because the more they interbreed, again, you're trying to trace them back to wolves, and you get to 1960, and you go, what? Or whatever you figure out. So
It's not a
it's not a
clean
clean
line,
line.
which is what breed registries try to
Right.
be.
We domesticated the dog. If you look at like, I don't know if they call it like the purest canine or the most basic canine, like what they would turn into once they were domesticated, or like the common and I don't know the name, but like the common breed of dog in Africa.
The pariah dog, or what's known as a pariah dog, they all
Right.
kind of revert to the same
Yeah,
scrappy looking brown.
and they are scrappy looking. Yeah. And that
Medium
happens
coat,
all over, if you get sort of the indigenous dog, that's what they look like all over the world. But then where do we go to get, like you brought up, the dachshund, or I love squishy face dogs. And, which is just kind of cruel if you think about it from a breeding standpoint. But we do that because, I mean, I have animals simply on the basis that they amuse me. Like, that's what I go after. I want an amusing.
I think in these conversations we underestimate how what a
Oh my
drive
God.
amusement
That
is.
is the number one reason. I don't have dogs that don't, like, we have a border collie and he doesn't amuse me, but I'm not the one who brought him home. I love him very much, but
Well, I will talk
yes,
about border
yes,
collies and how they amuse us, but what you were talking about with throwing the stick and
yeah,
and the dog returns it. Even if it returns it close and you
right,
don't quite know why, that was interesting. That was innately
yes,
amusing, at least
yes.
for a time,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
because it's entertainment, it's play, it's
Right.
mutually
And if you're
entertaining.
talking hunter and gatherers, which is who domesticated dogs, not farmers, according to the timeline that they've figured out, hunter gatherers have a lot of downtime, much more
Yes.
than we've ever had as industrial people and farmers. So they're sitting around and you're tossing a stick.
That reminds me.
You have time for that.
Oh my gosh, Anne, let's put a pin in this for a second and see if I can find that quote. I got it. Cave painting. This was an article by Thurston. Oh no, this is a book by Mary E. Thurston, The Lost History of the
Okay.
Canine Race, Our 15,000-Year
Okay.
Love Affair with Dogs. Okay. And she says cave painting fails to feature anything that can be definitely pointed to as a wolf or a dog. There were others that there was a Chauvet cave. Is that how you say it?
Oh,
Chauvet,
those.
discovered
Yes.
in
They were like
1994.
some of the oldest that they found, I think. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
32,000 years ago. That showed grazing animals and predators and so forth, right? And 12,000 years ago, there was a footprint of a boy beside the paw print of a large dog.
Yeah, that's that has been fictionalized into so many stories.
So she says it shows other wild dogs, but it did not show humans, wolves, or dogs either
Okay.
alone or together, right? Artists at other caves did not depict humans or canids either. Or is it canid? Canid. The artists might have believed that self-revelation, so they didn't depict
Right.
themselves, but they also didn't depict dogs, which is the omission of self and dog is an interesting coincidence. So if they thought this is what she's thinking, the artist might have believed that self-revelation would bring them harm, the way that American Indians supposedly believed that if there was a picture of them, their spirit would be captured and bad fate would befall them. And what I loved about that is because it implies that a portrait of the dog is a portrait of yourself. There's a saying the Australian Aborigines say, the dingo is what we would be if we were not what we
Ah.
are. And then the other possibility as to why there were no dogs is because, like in Judaism and Islam, it's a taboo to create an image of the deity.
Okay. It goes back to that, just the connection and the fact that yeah.
Our dogs ourselves.
So to bring it back to the playing fetch thing,
Okay.
is
Yeah.
that, again, it amuses us, but it was behavior that we observed that we wanted to replicate.
Ooh, we wanted more of it.
We wanted more of it, and maybe because it was useful, maybe because it was entertaining, which brings us to border collies. So, Lisa, you were going to talk about border collies.
I am going to talk about border collies because it's the breed that I know the best, partly. But also, I'm about as fascinated by border collies as they are by sheep.
Wow.
And yes. And, I've had hobbies, I've had fascinations with, like I used to do crewel embroidery and those things come and go. I used to play music
Right.
and I don't anymore. I used to roller skate, I used to swing dance, right? And I don't anymore. But the border collie, I cannot quit it. And I would really like to sometimes.
It's work intensive.
First,
They're work dogs and they take a lot of time.
I'm going to
Yes.
talk about that. I'm going to talk about that. Why? What is wrong with me is what I'm talking about. I think I first saw a border collie. It must have been
Wow.
1988, 87, 88. And I pretty much have had a border collie
Wow.
ever since. And yeah, there's some years there. Anyway, I would like to start talking about the border collie by this confluence of ideas that came into my head around the time that my border collie, Casey, she was 13, 14 years old when I read Michael Pollan's The Botany of Desire. It's called, the subtitle is A Plant's Eye View of the World. Okay. It came out in 2002, but that's not when I read it. It was already out for a while. And when I read this book, I recognized a possible answer to what the heck is wrong with me. Okay, so I'm going to read you a couple of quotes that are from the intro to his book where he recognizes the parallel to dogs. Okay, he's just talking about plants. And he's talking about domestication, which the word domestication needs an object. It's a verb. The verb to domesticate needs an object. And what you just told us about who domesticated whom implies that it's a mutual thing. Like, yes, domestication, has domicile in it, right? Like it's genetically altering a creature to make it compliant or to make it into something that lives harmoniously in our domicile or in the surrounding areas, right? If the dog was shaping us in turn, is there a word for that? Because we don't go live in their dirt holes in the ground, right? So, but anyway, that's maybe a little too academic. So let's just have some fun with border collies. So Michael Pollan writes, we automatically think of domestication as something we do to other species. But it makes just as much sense to think of it as something certain plants and animals have done to us. A clever evolutionary strategy for advancing their own interests. The species that have spent the last 10,000 years or so figuring out how best to feed, heal, clothe, intoxicate, and otherwise delight us have made themselves some of nature's greatest success stories. Okay, so in the book, I remember him using the word pinging to talk about
Oh, okay.
genes. For example, when he talked about the apple, he talks about, I think, 5 different plants that we have propagated because we like something in it, and it becomes an evolutionary success story. And if you look at the plant's eye view, the plant happened upon something we wanted, and then we propagated it. And really, all any gene wants is to propagate itself, like a coronavirus, for example, right? So we think, oh, we mastered the apple,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
The red delicious apple. But really, did we, or did the apple take advantage of us? I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, you're going out in the woods and you see, like around here, you will sometimes see a wild orange tree, and I remember it's like happening upon in the woods up in Pennsylvania, an apple tree. And then you taste that fruit and it's awful.
Sour, bitter, all
Right?
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I always kind of thought that if I took a red delicious apple seed and stuck it in the ground, a red delicious apple would come up.
No,
That's
it's
not
not.
it at all, because each of those seeds is as individual
Right.
as we are, and it's going to make its own fruit. So how do we have so many red delicious apples? They are all grafts. They are all clones. Okay. So he says that nature, or every living thing, is pinging the universe. Each seed that it, whatever the seed is taking a chance at survival.
Okay.
So the border collie, or
Mhm.
any dog, and you were talking about like the foxes that the flight distance, and the dogs that approach the fire. In fact, he talked about that very briefly. This is what he said about dogs. He said, the surprising thing is we don't ordinarily regard species like the cow and the potato, the tulip and the dog as nature's more extraordinary creatures. The wolf is somehow more impressive to us than the dog. Yet, says Michael Pollan, there are 50 million dogs in America today. That would have been in
Right. Oh, geez,
2002.
it's more now.
And only 10,000 wolves. So what does the dog know about getting along in this world that its wild ancestor doesn't? Which I think you answered. The big thing the dog knows about, the subject it has mastered in the 10,000 years it has been evolving at our side, is us. Our needs and desires, our emotions and values, all of which it has folded into its genes as part of a sophisticated strategy for survival. If you could read the genome of the dog like a book, you would learn a great deal about who we are and what makes us tick. So that's what I want to talk about in regards to the border collie. Because speaking of genetic success stories, when I read Michael Pollan, it was just something I think I was already thinking about quite a bit, was that the border collie is such a young breed.
Yeah, it's not ancient. Right.
No, not like a deerhound or something, I think, right? I mean, we have a photograph. And I guess it struck me because I was here for the explosion of border collies in the world. When I first got my first border collie, it was 1988 or so. And when I took her out in the world, no one knew what she was.
Oh,
And I was in rural Pennsylvania, where, well, of course, I was in a college town. There were not a lot of farmers in the college town, but people
right.
didn't know what she was. People outside rural communities did not know what she was. And they would ask me, what is she a mix of? But now, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but now the border collie is an AKC's most popular list, most popular dog breed list. They're like 33,
Wow.
35. And I think Stanley Coren is largely responsible. Stanley Coren and CNN are largely responsible for that when he wrote The
Right.
Intelligence of
Yeah.
Dogs.
And that's it. They're smart. Everybody wanted a smart dog. Yeah.
Right. And they would show them herding sheep, and it was really cool. And David Letterman had border collies herd sheep
Right.
on stage, into a cab and into an elevator. He had them, you know. So suddenly they hit mass media. They were
Yes.
trending. So I was telling you, around the time that my 14-year-old border collie Casey died, I read Michael Pollan's The Botany of Desire, and I had been a single mom for about 10 years, and my only child had just gone off to college, so the dog had been my main source of comfort and continuity, I guess. So when she died, I was just a train wreck. But I didn't want to just jump on the next border collie that became available because no one would give it to me, actually. But that's another question. I wanted to do it right. Like, I wanted to do the dog shopping thing right, rescue a dog. Anyway, I'm putting air quotes around right. That seemed really important to me, that I shop for a dog the right way, because I was a good dog person.
Okay.
Right. And I was fascinated by what Pollan's book implied about doing it right. Like, what is this behavior in me? What's driving me to adopt a dog the right way? Get the right dog the right way. And it depends on so many cultural influences, like parenting the right way, or praying the right way in your community, or carrying yourself in a gendered world in the right way. These are all behavioral choices. Something's motivating us to make these choices, and we're doing it based on like the forces around us. So I was fascinated, as I've said, about my own attachment to border collies and the sacrifices I was willing to make to have a border collie, right? And I became fascinated because when I got a border collie, like, people were saying, oh, you're going to have sheep, or you're going to have a job for it to do. Like, the cultural imperative was to keep your dog entertained.
And busy. Because if you don't find them a job, they will find their own job, and it's not going to be something you like.
Okay, they're going to wreck your, they're going to tear your couch
the new
apart.
job.
But why would I want that?
Right.
Why would I want a dog that is going to destroy my house, or nip me because it's so bored? So, and but by the time Casey died, she was my third border collie, and she was 14. It had been at least 20 years. And from my first border collie to this border collie, suddenly everybody knew what a border collie was, and they were they're still popular. Mick is 8 now, going on 9. I don't, I think the stats I looked up was 33, number 33, 33rd most popular dog in the United States. That was a 2019 statistic. Wow. And the Australian Shepherd and the mini Australian Shepherd were higher on that. Yes, so herding dogs and Aussies are. I
really are they more? They're more energetic.
There's something I don't talk about in this, and it's biddability. The border collie has a couple of innate. You were talking about the innate ability to read meaning into a human gesture, and we didn't even talk about eyebrows.
We didn't even get there.
We didn't even touch the eyebrows, Anne.
I did. I thought about the eyebrow, but I didn't bring it up.
Another episode. But they I lost my train of thought. So, the biddability, the border collie has biddability that I'm not sure, at least in the ones that I see locally, I'm not sure the Australian Shepherd quite has the same biddability as a border collie. And by biddability, I mean the willingness to do your bidding.
The eagerness to please, to do what you'd like.
Yes, that is something we have not talked about yet, but that is something that is bred into a dog. Not only the innate ability to read meaning in your body language and in your vocalizations, like a predisposition to find significance in what you say and do, that is meaningful to the dog, but a willingness then to elicit praise and food from you, like to see you as a source of pleasure, of good things. Right. So it will do things to get rewards from you. That is biddability, to do your bidding. And a border collie has that in a very high degree. And the border collie also has eyes, which we'll talk about shortly. So let me get back to, I didn't bring, I have, for example, I was fascinated by my attachment to border collies and why so many other people get hooked on border collies the same way that I do in the last 20 years at this time. Had been about 20 years, when they cause so much trouble they require such an expenditure of time and attention and effort. There must be something in them that we find worth it. And I found the other day, I was looking through my sewing kit and I found a piece of a t-shirt that I had cut out. Like I had thrown out the t-shirt because I didn't like it. I think it was like one of those unisex, which is not really unisex, and it like rubs my throat the wrong way. And but I liked what was on it so much that I cut that off and I thought I'm gonna like sew it to the back of the jacket or something. And it is a drawing of a border collie like racing after, like it's in a full gallop, okay, extension
Yes.
gallop, right? And like a blur of speed. And it says, it's not a dog, it's an addiction. Okay, and that's a t-shirt I bought years and years ago, like I think even before I had Mick. So I wanted to know, in a Michael Pollan way, what does the border collie have that has so capitalized on humans that it has made us propagate it?
Yes.
All right. So and to hold ourselves to such a bizarre standard, like that you have to raise it a certain way, train it a certain way, entertain it
I know we've said
to
that
do it
my
right.
husband says about ours is he can't live up to his dog's expectations, and he feels horribly guilty about that.
We want that. We want that somehow, and we hold each other to it. We're very judgmental, at least in the dog world, very judgmental about how other people treat their
Oh, I'm
herding
sure.
dogs. But in particular border, because I joined a rescue for a while and I fostered dogs, as you know, and the standards we hold, like it is, you have to go through the eye of a needle to
Oh,
get a
yes,
border collie.
and I have that story as well.
Yes. So I had lived with border collies for 20 years, like I said, and I did not have a sheep farm and I did not
Right.
do agility. And I felt very guilty and I wanted to change. I was driven to change that. But were my dogs unhappy?
No, of course not.
Not at all. No, because they were just as happy. I played ball with them a lot. I
Right.
played frisbee with them a lot. I played in the house. Like my whole house was border collie game land. They were happy. They were happy being with me. I did train them. They were happy working with me, but according to some, I was not raising them right. And I wanted to make good on that. Anyway, there are a hell of a lot more border collies out there than there are sheep farms. So I wanted to investigate this phenomenon in America. And I figured at the time that Casey died that I would write a book, I would investigate, and while I was investigating, I would then get myself into border collie circles because I couldn't prove anything. I had no titles on my dogs. No one would give me a rescue dog, border collie, even though I'd lived with them happily for 20 years, because I had no titles. I couldn't say, look, I got a mock on a border collie. So like you have to not only have had a border collie, because I have had 3, but you have to prove that you are a worthy border collie person. And at that point, to those people, I could not prove that. And I had moved from Pennsylvania where I had border collie connections. I had moved to Florida, didn't have any here. So I was having trouble getting the attention of rescuers who would let me rescue a dog. So I thought, well, I'll indulge my passion for this dog by interviewing agility people, herding people, flyball people, and look at what the heck are we doing? Who are we? So as I said, it's a relatively recent breed that has exploded in popularity, which means it has exploded in numbers, which means it is genetically successful. And let me tell you about the first border collie. And I think the answer to what the hell's going on is right there in the first border collie. So that border collie was born in 1893. There were already lots of herding dogs.
Oh, yeah.
In 1893. They were sheep dogs or whatever. There's a herding group. So they came from the Anglo-Scottish border region. That's why they're called border collies. But it really began as a single breeding line. Do you remember Jim the Wonder Dog? Yes, he was a Llewellyn setter. And there was some argument about whether or not that was its own breed or whether or not it was just a famous line, breed line. Like Mick comes from a line called the Fleet Border Collies. It is in some circles, it is a popular and recognized line. Like people can look at Mick and know that he's a Fleet puppy. So it's a subset, and there are lots of them, subsets of border collies. Like you can tell a
Yes,
Labar,
you can.
you know.
Being one of 10, it doesn't take much for me to walk down the street in my hometown and people say, "Hey, you're a Labar."
Right, and you can tell my daughter's a shawl. She has the, the family. So, it, certain breed lines will have identifiable characteristics, and they may not be physical. What happened was this dog was named Old Hemp, which sometimes you see spelled AULD.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are photos of him, or there is a photo of
I
him
guess I've
that
seen
you
the
can see on the.
photo, but is there just one?
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
Wikipedia. You can look it up. I think it's just one. So at that time, it was just a dog named Hemp. This information I've gotten from Wikipedia, Janet Elisabeth Larson's book, The Versatile Border Collie, R.B. Robertson's book of Sheep and Men. So here's the story. Old Hemp's owner was Adam Telfer. And the lore goes that in Northumberland, England, Telfer, who was a sheep farmer, bred 2 of his own sheepdogs. A crazy, hard-eyed bitch. This is a quote. A crazy, hard-eyed bitch. He bred to a good-natured sire. And let me tell you what "I" means. Let me scroll down a little bit and find my definition of "I," because you might as well know now. So sheep herders were breeding for I. And I is something that is peculiar to border collies. In fact, now it's called border collie I, which I guess is about an intensity. Really, this behavior is in other dogs, but it's exaggerated in the border collie to a problematic degree, as you know.
Yeah, actually, I do.
Here, I'll define it, and then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It is I got this, I think, from Janet Elisabeth Larson. It is a creeping or stalking approach to livestock. Okay, it's a relentless stare. I had a handyman when I rented a house. My first border collie, I lived with my first border collie, and the handyman would knock on the door and ask me with a worried look to please put the dog away, because he didn't like her eyes. He didn't like the way she looked at him. All right. So, but it's not just there's a breeder who calls their kennel Lock Eye. It is their eyes, their gaze locks on to their target and does not waver. The focus is so intense, and it includes a whole body stance in eye. They have the head low, the shoulder blades kind of, the head and neck are so low that the shoulder blades kind of rise up out of the back area. And they have what's called a dead tail.
Okay.
Which is they carry the tail so low and tight against the haunches. And it hangs in a kind of J shape. And some border collies who have a stronger eye will hold that tail so low and tight that it actually kind of comes between the back legs. Instead of being behind them, it's kind of under them.
Okay. Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? It's tucked so low, and I guess based on some of the other reading that I've done, the reason that they will lift a tail and wave it, like wag it, is to distribute their scent and to invite someone to sniff
but
them
isn't
there,
it a flag?
right? And that's
I
that
always
actually.
say it looks like he's waving a flag.
Yes, it does. But the fur, will disperse theoretically. Let's just talk genetically. It will disperse their scent when the tail is up and the tail is wagging. It disperses the scent and it invites another dog to come check them out. Check out my junk, right? But if you're hunting, you don't want your prey to smell you. So if you tuck the tail in, you clamp those molecules in against your haunches, and you hold the tail very still. You're not dispersing your scent. Shepherd's looking for a good working dog. If the dog works the sheep and the tail is up and flagging, they call that a gay tail, and that's not a serious dog. That's a dog that's playing.
Okay, not working.
And that's not a dog that's hunting, right? So a border collie eye is a whole body stance. It's the head position, the gaze, and it is associated with stalking prey. The problem with border collies who get so much pleasure out of staring at a target like prey is that this becomes obsessive behavior, neurotic behavior, and they chase cars. I think the number one cause of death in border collies is being hit by cars, because they don't chase the car. They stare at it and they run out in front of it. which is that's the outrun. It's when a pack of wolves or probably other canines do cooperative hunting behavior.
When Buddy was a puppy, that's what he did. He would start to try to run in front of the car. Yeah.
Yes. It's so dumb. It's not evolutionary adaptations at all. Nobody told border collies about the cars when they bred them. But that the one in a pack when they divide labor, you have some that are going to jump and take down, grab the prey by the neck and pull and take it down, and then you have some that are going to drive it. They're going to nip at the heels, and then you have some that are going to ambush them. They're going to run out ahead. And so the border collie is a line of dogs, hunting canines that are bred to be the ones that speed around from a distance without drawing any attention to themselves, and then they drive the herd toward the other ones who are waiting to pounce on them. So, but border collies will chase cars or try to do an outrun. They call it to run around at a distance and then come up on the car. They do that to children. They do it to blowing leaves. Buddy, I've seen do it to water lapping in the pool. When we were swimming in the pool, he will run, he will circle the pool, he will chase the waves. I saw another dog doing that in a wading pool a couple days ago. Oh yeah, another border collie. In agility, I was at a handling camp, Karen Hollick's handling camp, and most people had border collies, and at least one of them, got mesmerized by the lapping water in this pool where they were dunking themselves.
Thing is he doesn't want to get wet, thank you very much, but he wants to herd the water. Yes.
Right, but we were at a party at your house, and there were a lot of people in the pool, and Buddy ran and ran and ran until his paws were bloody. And Mick and Maisie do the same thing, and that's not cool.
They can't stop.
They will chase. They cannot stop themselves.
He cannot.
That's the thing. No, there are dogs that will chase the shadows of leaves blowing on the wall in the house. Ants. I've heard of dogs getting fascinated by ants on the pavement and hurting them. So one of the worst things you could do is show your dog a laser beam on the floor. Yeah, because it's obsessive, and they will so indulge that mental state, which they find self-rewarding. I think it's probably like flow, but they get something so addictive out of it that they will harm themselves. But what I think is interesting here is that we love watching that.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been thinking about why, but we like it so much. People like me. I think I didn't go into this as much as I want to, but some people are born like a border collie, a litter of puppies, a border collie puppies. Some will have harder eye than others. Like Telford bred the hard-eyed bitch, and you don't really necessarily want it because it can be excessive. It can be too much. Right. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Telford, I just wanted to identify what I was, and I distracted myself. So he bred a hard-eyed bitch to a good-natured sire. So you take a dog that has this really strong predatory gaze, and you breed it to one that is good-natured, which may be biddable, or what Cheryl Jagger Williams, who bred Mick, who's a Fleet pup, Fleet and Belle were both sweet. They had hard eyes, particularly Fleet had a hard eye, but they were both sweet. And some people argue that the border collie is not just all out of hemp, like every border collie has hemp's blood, but there was another dog named Kep who was sweet. So it's that combination of eye, or drive, like this compulsion to hunt down prey, or at least to stalk it. It's just the stalking. It's not the biting. You don't want them biting your sheep, but a willingness to work with you, the sweetness, the biddability. So it's not what the border collie looks like. It's what the border collie behaves like. It's temperament. That's the working border collie is bred for eye, and
which is why I like the breed, because it isn't about what it looks like. And when you breed for looks sometimes, I think of course, you run into problems then, physical problems, whatever, things like I like squishy face dogs. And there's different types of like Boston Terriers. Some of them are very long legged. They almost look like miniature boxers. And other ones are very short legged. And those are the ones that do well in shows. So then you get
Right.
physical problems then, bloaty knees and things.
That
Where 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 a
yes.
working dog is bred for behavior, so you end up kind of sidestepping, not always, but sidestepping some physical issues that may come from like overbreeding, that kind of thing. Am I right?
Right. One of the things I liked about them, yes, you are absolutely right. I mean, but breeding for any specific genetic trait is going to encourage piggybacking of
Right,
undesirable
right.
things. Like there's blindness or
Hmm.
epilepsy even in the working lines. But I thought it was charming that working border collies don't really look a whole lot. I mean, there's a border
Yeah,
collie look, but there's so much variety in the coat and the color. Like nobody cared what the border
right.
collie looked like. It could have
They
freckles,
can
it
be
could have none,
little,
it
they
could
can
have
be
one ear
really
standing up, one
big,
ear
they
flopped.
can, yeah, they're all different sizes.
It was all about how did they
Right.
behave? What was their personality? It's kind of a personality thing. So, and I think personality is probably more important to people than they realize when they go dog shopping. They think, well, I want a beagle, or I want a West Highland White, and they don't really necessarily ask themselves which of these West Highland White puppies is the right personality for
Mm,
me. And then you end up with some heartache. The Stanley Coren, who wrote The Intelligence of Dogs,
yes.
mentioned it before, lobbed border collies into popular consciousness, but he also wrote a book called Why We Love the
Mm,
Dogs We Do. Talks about the different temperaments and how to match yourself to a dog that you'll love and get along with, like your heart dog. So anyway, Old Hemp, he was the son of an unknown rascal named Roy, who had a very free eye and frank expression. I'm quoting Robertson here, and an equally unknown mother named Meg, who was a shy and somewhat self-conscious bitch, but she had a hard eye.
got it.
Self-conscious bitch. I know a few though. Anyway, so Telfer got the best. He just happened to get the best of both of those dogs. He got the hard eye and he got the winning personality. The not really laid back, but
Yes.
good nature in Hemp. But here's the thing. I'm sure there were lots of dogs like that, a lot of sheepdogs like that. But sheep country hillsides on the British Isles ran with many a shepherd's cur, is what they called them there, and they had strong eye and they had sweet temperament. And they weren't border collies. But Hemp was different. Hemp had a new way with sheep. He had this gentle intensity that no one had ever seen before. Sheep moved for him as if
Wow.
hypnotized. With a gaze, I'm quoting myself here, by the way. It's something I wrote before. With a gaze that stirred but did not panic the sheep.
Ah,
He worked from a distance in an attitude of calm and persistent
interesting.
haste that gave him a breathtaking efficiency. Old Hemp's eye moved sheep like
Hmm.
magic, and when Old Hemp worked, no man could look away. And here's a quote from Robertson. He wrote, "The Scottish collies were clever, but Hemp was
Mm,
cleverer. The collies were tough, but Hemp was tougher. The collies could manage sheep, but Hemp could overawe them. The shepherds could teach the collies, but Hemp could teach the shepherds. Soon the shepherds, who had always paid the collies the most supreme Scottish compliment that they were nice so bad, agreed that Hemp was bloody marvelous." So Telfer was running Old Hemp in sheep herding trials, unbeaten. I see in some sources that Telfer ran Hemp in trials, and he won them all. If you go to Wikipedia, it says there's no evidence that Hemp was ever run in a trial. I don't know how so many people would have bred
if
to
he hadn't,
Hemp if
right,
if he hadn't. I mean, that's what
right.
the trials are for, is to show off your
And
dog
get a
and say,
breeding fee,
hey,
right?
there you go. So here's a really interesting thing about Hemp and the border collie in general is I always thought the border collie was bred to herd sheep like shepherds wanted them, and they do,
Right.
and to work their farms. No, the border collie is bred to win sheep herding
Oh,
trials. It is a sport
oh,
dog, because it's one thing to herd your own sheep on
right.
your own land. the border collie gets to know all
Mhm.
the dog gets to know all the sheep and gets to
Right.
know the land and the habits of the sheep, and they get to know each other, right? A trial, you're working sheep that you've never met,
Right.
and you're working on land you've never seen, and all these people are around, and so a dog that can focus under those conditions with all those distractions around,
Gotcha.
that's an athlete. Okay. So the thing about him too, besides all his mesmerizing behaviors, like the mesmerize not only the sheep but the people watching them, um, his offspring also had that behavior.
Ah.
Like that combination in him was a dominant trait. So within 1 year after hemp, I don't know, started getting sold out for
Yes.
stud, um, he sired over 200 males
Whoa.
alone within 1 year. Yes, within a decade, they were saying no man could count his progeny.
Wow.
And that's because no man could count them all because his offspring had swept the International Sheep Herding Championships. So not only would hemp win trials, but his
Right.
offspring
Yes.
won trials. And people are like, where'd you get
Mhm.
that dog? That's a hemp dog.
Yeah.
Okay, at some point in here, hemp's line was crossed with Kep's
Okay.
line to make them sweeter because some of them were, I guess, a little bit of that
Yeah,
hard-eyed
yeah.
bitch too much, the self-conscious bitch, which you
Maybe
still
a little
see.
nippier. Yeah.
Probably. They just
Right.
weren't as biddable. So, Kep sweetened the hemp line. So, they ran, as Telfer said of old hemp, like a meteor across the sheepdog
Wow.
horizon. So he was a phenomenon. He was like the Tiger Woods. If Tiger Woods, all of his young,
Could play
while
just as
Tiger
well
was
as
young,
him.
yes, and with such mesmerizing grace that you would also sell a
Right.
lot of tickets.
Right.
You know? So those dogs, Old Hemp's progeny, ran from Scotland to France to Belgium to Germany to the Netherlands to North America to South Africa to Australia, English-speaking worlds,
Yes.
New Zealand. Hemp only lived 8
Wow.
years, but so this is Robertson says within 10 years of his death, it could truly be said that the sun never
Wow.
set on Hemp's offspring. All right. So to this day, every border collie has Hemp's blood and Kep's
Okay.
blood. All right. So, and hemp is considered the
Right.
forefather of the border collie breed. So, like the Llewellyn line, the border collie is a line of herding dogs that has now become its own breed, and it has kind of bifurcated, as you were saying, about breeding them for
Yes.
appearance. There's a book by Don McCaig. It's a slim little book, and it's called The Dog Wars. And I was around for that. I had a border collie at that time, and I was belonged to a border collie
Oh,
listserv
okay.
where there was this big brouhaha about whether or not border collies should be admitted into the AKC stud books and become an AKC registered breed, because AKC requires physical. I mean, I think they tried to do a good job of not being strict, but people
Yes.
are people, and if you want what they ended up doing was delineating what the border collie would look like. But as you said, there will be a prevalent
Yes.
style, right? Like you mentioned, like shorter legs. This is of course was bound to happen in the border collie, where they are going to judges are going to prefer the classic what they call Dutch
The black and
markings
white.
with the broad
Oh,
white
right.
blaze. Yes, the black and white with the broad white even blaze. A working border collie can have like no blaze or a crooked
Mhm.
blaze. Nobody gives a shit about
Right.
its blaze, right? The depth, the length of the
Right.
coat, the way the back end angulates, So I can recognize an AKC border collie like a mile off, and I think of them as Oreo cookies.
Now, would you think now Buddy is AKC,
Mhm.
and does he look AKC? Well, I guess he does. He's the medium size. He's a gray merle or a blue merle.
That's another thing is, yeah, the merling, coat color became
Right.
a value, marketable value to have a merle, to have a blue merle or a
Right.
red merle, to have a lavender or whatever the
But yeah,
different
Buddy
shades
does have
are.
the skirt and he's got the tail that's this big banner. And so yeah, I guess that's AKC style with the skirt and yeah.
Yeah. So McCaig said, and a lot of people were saying, well, so what? Let AKC have its border collie, and we will continue to have the
Yeah.
working border collie. which looks like you would not necessarily recognize some of these dogs as border collies because they
Right.
don't have that classic
Right.
Dutch marking. But they do the thing that border collies do. So really what has happened is the breed has
Okay.
split. So there's the working border collie, and then there's the what working people, fans of working border collies,
Mhm.
call the AKC border collie a
Oh,
Barbie
and Buddy's
collie.
definitely a Barbie collie. He's
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, he kind of is.
And already, I mean, what's it been? Maybe 20 years, but I hear from people in herding that the Barbie collies don't necessarily really
Oh
know what
yeah,
they're
Buddy
doing
doesn't
out
know what he's
there,
doing.
or they have that really keyed up, obsessive, it's not a
Yes.
balanced
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
eye. It is an over the top
Yes.
neurotic eye. They're just gonna. My one friend had a young dog. We go on these boat trips to this island. It's a person and their dog take their dogs on boat
Yeah.
trips
Actually,
like to
yeah,
an
I have a
island.
friend who has a boat and they got a dog specifically because the dog was like cool with being on the boat.
Oh, no, this is a tour.
Oh,
This is a
okay.
tour for people and their
Oh,
pets.
gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
there's a boat tour, and then, like, once in a while, they'll just sell tickets for people with their dogs, and you go to an island, you let your
Oh,
dog run around the island, and you
okay.
drive back. So, my friend went with someone who had a Barbie collie, border collie, on this boat trip, and they could not keep the dog in the boat because the dog would chase passing boats. And it would just it was a puppy, it would just
Right.
fling
Yeah,
itself off
yeah.
the boat. I mean, that's a young dog.
Yeah.
She saw that as evidence that these
No,
dogs
he
don't work.
wasn't
Let's
trained.
not get
He
into
wasn't
these.
trained.
Again, I'm also interested in the behavior that it sparks in
Right.
us, that there are people who will judge
Oh,
each
right.
other or which border collie you chose and how that border collie behaves or doesn't behave. Like, there's a right way and a wrong way for a border collie. And the tendency in people to want to say this, we fans of the working collie believe this, and therefore the others are wrong. And then the others, I don't know what they think of us. I say us because I'm a fan of the working collie because I'm addicted to
Right.
I. Let's get back to I. So they say, people in dog sports say, if you want a dog, get a dog. If you want to win, get a border
Okay.
collie. Because the border collie was bred not just to herd sheep, but to work under a certain kind of under trial
Okay.
conditions. It's got that focus. Author and commentator Egg Halsall was also, he's a contemporary of Telfer, and he saw hemp run on sheep, and he said about hemp, none who saw him ever forgot him. He was almost faultless in work. He was born with such a knowledge of his craft that he never required training and went to his work naturally. So hemp was, you could think of hemp as he was like the next best gadget for sheep control. Like, all sheep farmers had to have a border collie the way everybody has to have a Roomba or a
Right.
pressure cooker or an air fryer now.
Instapot. Yeah.
Yes, Instapot. He was the Instapot of his day. It wasn't so much about herding your sheep on your farm. It was about
Right.
winning trials. And I guess people, like we were saying, people like to throw sticks and have dogs bring them back. Like, we like to play, but we like to win,
Okay.
right? The addictive thing about the border collie is that you can win with it.
Mm,
You're winning. Even if you just have a border collie, you've proven that that you
right.
can own one. Like, you won over the trust of the rescuers who have such high standards for who they are going to adopt one of these difficult
Right.
dogs out to, right? Or the breeders are only going to let their dogs go to if you're doing
Yes.
it right. The breeder is going to make
Oh,
you
yeah.
work for it. It's going to make you
Right.
prove. Yeah. So you're going to win. So the border collie is a dog that goes to overachievers, or maybe I like to joke that it attracts people who are codependent. Like, the border collie has an addiction,
Yes.
right, to its own eye, to chasing a laser pointer, or like, and then the codependent wants to take care of someone who has addiction, right? So, and we want to be the best at
Yes.
taking care of our the frisbee-aholic, right? So one of the best things I love about border collies is that I never get tired of watching them, and I have some other thoughts about that besides being codependent, or a perfectionist, an overachiever, a straight A student. Is that codependent behavior
That's
too? Like being
perfectionist behavior.
okay. So I think a certain type of woman, I mean, there are men too,
Right.
obviously, but nowadays the proliferation of the breed seems to be among soccer mom types. Like your kids you've already proven to the world that you're the best mom there is because your child got in the best school, got a football scholarship or whatever, right? Got high SAT scores. Like you're always going for the
Yeah.
overachiever thing, and you have, my child is
Right.
smarter, honor student, and now you get the border collie sticker. My border collie is
Student,
smarter than
right.
your honor student.
I've seen that.
Right. Yeah, and then you're in agility, and you were used to be taking your kid to T-ball, now you're taking your dog to agility
Yeah.
trials, right? Or fly ball or whatever sport that you're gonna prove yourself in. So, I think there's something else to the border like, if you want a dog, get a dog. If you want to win,
Right.
get a border collie. So, it's that type of person. It's whatever that drive is in us to be proving ourselves, to be the
Yes.
winner, the overachiever, the perfectionist. There's this other thing in the border collies that I see in the border collie that I don't see in other dogs. And other people who have border collies say the same thing about them. And it's the same, I guess, with any dog. Like there's something about a dachshund, you
Right.
have to have a dachshund. And there's something about the West Highland White, you have to have a
Yes.
Westie. And there are myriad reasons
Right.
for that. And someday maybe we'll talk about slippery jeans. But as soon as I saw a border collie, I had to have one. But it was that predatory stance. There is something like right before this, you and I met, I took my dogs out to play Frisbee before, because I have to. I have to
Right.
take them out many times a day to play Frisbee. And I saw it in Mick. It's in Mick more than it is in Maisie. And I get this little flutter when I see it. It's that creeping, stalking, wolfish
Yes.
behavior. It's the predator gestalt.
Okay.
And other dogs have it, but it is so hardwired in the border collie. It's that whole posture.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
You
Oh,
do. So you
absolutely.
know what
When
I
Buddy
mean.
does that, it's by the pool, but when Buddy does that, we all go,
Yeah.
"Oh."
Yes. My dogs look like the wolf in Red Riding Hood. It is this atavistic
Yeah.
recognition of that dark and evil force in nature, in the wild, that I need to understand so that I can stay safe. E.O. Wilson talked about people who are actually about primates, just about the snake,
Oh,
the
yes.
snake
Yeah.
gestalt. That we see a snake, you're frightened, and then you're fascinated.
Yes.
And you will get to a safe distance, and then you will stare.
There's just something so intense and beautiful about it. I don't know. When Buddy does that,
It
and
is
I will notice a
beautiful.
border collie because we'll say, "Ooh, look, he's doing a thing."
It doesn't go away. Like once you're working with a border
Right.
collie, you can't go back. And people buy agility equipment, or they end up paying a great deal of money to take herding lessons, and then they want to buy the farm, and then they want to live
Yes.
on the farm. And it is common for women, particularly women, to leave their husbands and buy a sheep farm.
I like the border collie bend to it because it's a trait, and it was a working trait. And even though it was for trials, that was born out of
Yes.
herding.
But if we go back to Michael Pollan, the genes, like the apple seeds, were pinging the universe, and one of them had just the right crisp, sweet. So the border collie, so all these herding dogs are out there, and their genes are pinging the universe, and then old hemp happened to get seen. It was a visual thing, happened to get seen at a trial doing his magic, and then all the people at the trial were mesmerized.
Right.
They had never seen, they could not forget him. There was something happened in them, like for the gala. You bit into it, something happened, and now you always want gala. So that was how the border collie, I wouldn't say domestic, I think that's the wrong
Right.
word. The border collie did not domesticate his.
It found those people.
Yeah, so the
Right.
shepherds proliferated it all over the world, and then the
Right.
soccer moms found it. So it's kind of hard to talk about dogs, I think I'm concluding, without talking about the people who are attracted to the
Okay.
breed because the breed serves some need
Yes.
in them.
Yeah.
Who knew that American housewives, had the same thing going on as
Right.
shepherds in the
Right.
1890s Anglo-Scottish border region?
Who knew? Well, we're linked evolutionarily wise, and you don't have a dog without a person, really. But you
Right.
can have a cat without a
And it's
person. They don't care. They're just fine. Thank you very much. No problem.
I wonder, we have shaped
Yes.
the dog,
Oh, yeah.
obviously. So, how have we changed because we lived with dogs? I think I have a strong suspicion that there is a genetic predilection toward companionship with
I think
dogs.
so too.
And some people really are dog people, just like some people can play music. They have the gene. I think they have identified
Wow.
the gene for music. I think there's probably a gene for interacting with dogs that was evolutionarily
Right.
advantageous for many of the reasons you said. And I have it.
Yes, you do.
I love talking to
I guess
dogs.
that's why I like cats. I'm like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I'll come find you when I want you.
Anyway, I don't know if we've answered the question
Mm.
who domesticated whom, or
No,
if they
yeah,
domesticated
I
us,
think we're down the middle in things.
or that it was mutually
Yes,
beneficial. That it.
that's my vote. That's my vote.
I love this stuff, and I love talking about this stuff with you. It's very cool. Thank you for listening to me. Special thanks to Chip Salerno for our music. If you like this stuff as much as we do, please subscribe to our podcast and like us. It's a little click that's a big reinforcer. While you're at it, give us some more positive reinforcement, a favorable review. Just tell us what you did like and ignore the rest, as they say. That way, we'll know what to keep doing. Visit our website, thisanimallife.com, to learn more. And while you're there, check out our merch. We also sell Blue 9 climb tables and accessories. They are such a fun, useful, safe, and sturdy training aid. They make a huge difference. And you know what? At checkout, type in This Animal Life 10. That's This Animal Life 10 to get 10% off plus free shipping at checkout. That's an enormous savings. I think you're gonna love it.